Welcome everyone to Iron Game Chalk Talk, the #1 show for strength coaches. I'm McKeefery and I'm extremely excited about our guest today. Wil Fleming is a co-owner of Force Fitness in Bloomington, Indiana. He's a former competitive Olympic weightlifter and a Division I athlete. He's authored several articles around the web, including a book by the IYCA, The Essentials of High School Strength and Conditioning. He just released a DVD that I was able to review, and I got to say it was one of the better ones that I've seen. He's a great guy, an intelligent strength coach, and I know you're all going to get something out of this interview. It's coming up now on Iron Game Chalk Talk. Enjoy. All right, real quick, I got to mention Strength Coach Basic Training. It's an online education program that I created for the up-and-coming strength coach. It's the same lecture series that I've used for years to train the coaches that have started with me. For more information, go to www.strengthcoachbasictraining.com. All right, I'm with Wil Fleming. Wil, welcome to the show, man. Great to have you on.
Coach, thank you very much for having me on.
Good, buddy. Well, hey, just for the guys that are watching that aren't as familiar with you, could you go into your background just a little bit and tell us how you got into Olympic lifting? It's a pretty neat story.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. So I was at a place, and I'm not a big guy. Maybe 5'11" on a good day, and people still don't believe me when I say that. But when I was about 15 years old, I was playing football, and I just recall one play in particular where I was playing linebacker, and I just got destroyed by a high school senior who was significantly larger than me, and I thought to myself, man, I gotta do something about my strength, and I gotta do something about my speed and whatnot, because I was probably I was playing linebacker. Not a big school, but I was 160 pounds and ran a 5'1" or 5'2" 40. And so I found out where some particular guys who were really good at the crosstown rival, where they were working out, and I just showed up and asked them what I needed to do to work out, and it just so happened that was an Olympic weightlifting club, and the coaches that I was exposed to immediately were an Olympic Games team coach, and then a 1992 Olympian in Olympic lifting. So,
wow.
I just had really, really good coaches from the very start. And so those guys, just part of the deal was you were going to compete in Olympic lifting. So I walked in the door and I thought that I was, pretty strong for my class, and, I maybe power cleaned 165 to 175 pounds. And then, they broke me down and said, you're going to work with a broomstick for a month. And so we worked broomstick, and then we put 40 kilos on the bar and 50 kilos on the bar. I qualified for an Olympic lifting meet for the junior national meet with nothing nothing special like in terms of my total, and then they let me start using weight. But by this point I was pretty technically efficient, and I went to the meet and I did a 253 pound power clean, or clean and jerk, and that was a 70 pound or 80 pound PR for me. And I did 205 pound snatch in my second meet ever. So immediately I'd gone from never snatching 165, 170 pounds to these numbers that were tops on the school record boards now. And then I just continued with Olympic weightlifting and throughout high school, and just saw what kind of impact it made for me in terms of my development. Whereas by the time I was a senior, I had cleaned over 335 pounds. I had snatched 275 pouns. I won junior nationals as an Olympic lifter, and I ran a 4.5 40 weighing 215 pounds. At a not a big football school, some stuff. It helped me with a track career and helped me get a scholarship to do track in college. Spent time at the Olympic Training Center training right after high school as well. So Olympic lifts were kind of the foundation of what made me a successful athlete. And so as I progressed through college and ended up throwing the hammer for IU, I ended up being or Indiana University, I ended up being All-American. My lifts were still my main focus. So I just, after college, parlayed that into starting to train some athletes. It's a small group at first, and now we have over 150 athletes every week that we're working with, and over the course of 3 or 4 years in my gym, I've had a couple thousand athletes walk through the door at some point or another, and so I've been able to really hone in on Olympic lifting as an effective technique for almost every athlete, barring the ones that are have a particular injury or something like that. I can get athletes to Olympic lift quickly and efficiently. And so that's kind of how I came about in terms of first as an athlete with the Olympic lifts and as a coach with the Olympic lifts, just being able to hone in on what is successful and what's easy to teach for my athletes.
Isn't that great when your career comes full circle and it's kind of, you were the guy going in to the Olympic gym and now you're running the Olympic gym almost, you know?
It's fun. It's a rewarding experience,
No question. I have kind of a similar story. I grew up in Kansas City, and two guys that were very influential on me was Tom Cross at Mid-American Nazarene, and then Istvan Javort. And, so spending time training with those guys. And one of the things that Istvan would always stress, and you're probably familiar with, is his barbell complexes from a warm-up standpoint. What are some of the things that you do with your athletes from a warm-up standpoint, and really gearing this towards, say, the college strength coach where your time is really crunched down by the NCAA?
Yeah, of course. So, and this is something based off what Javort has done. That was a staple of our warm-up as Olympic lifters. But I even kind of took this a little bit further by stealing it from, Coach Doe's. And being at his place, he's got, pretty much himself working with a, junior college team. And their warm-up is really simple. They go through foam rolling, just a bit of dynamic stuff if they have anything in particular they need to work on or based off an FMS. And then if it's a strength day and they're focusing on the clean, they do a clean complex that day. And if they're working on the snatch, they do a snatch complex. So really similar kind of thing. So, these complexes for me change pretty often just based on where we're technically focused. So, we may do something like a clean deadlift with 40, 50 kilos on the bar, and then go into a high pull into, a clean from the hip, maybe a front squat and a push press for 3-4 reps each, and do 1 to 2 sets. And honestly, it's super efficient. It's really specific for what we're doing on that given day, and then the athletes are ready to go, and we can start escalating the training session from there.
You talked a little bit about you walked into the gym, you felt like you were a strong guy. These college athletes, same thing, and pro athletes, they walk in there, they are strong guys.
Yeah.
But as well as I do that, their technique's a lot to be desired. Talk about some of the things you do with your athletes where you break them down and you put it in a way. What are some of the coaching cues that you give that shows them that there's a necessity for stepping back and going to just putting that bar in your hand?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one thing is I just don't take for granted the level of knowledge that an athlete comes in, would walk in the door with. So, I'll ask them, obviously, if they've done cleans. We kind of do a rundown of what they've done before they come in and whatnot. And, if they've cleaned or snatched, typically most high school athletes have cleaned when they walk in the door. Most college athletes that are coming in have done some cleans.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah. We don't take that for granted. So from day one, they're going to be learning our progression from the first level, our hang clean start position, hang snatch start position, and just walk them through it. And for those athletes that have done it and have a pretty good handle on it, we're gonna spend maybe a day or 2 days on that. But and then we're back into working with them with some weight, some sort of loading. And then when we go back even to that bar complex is just spending time with a bar or 40 kilos. Working on different positions. So, it never hurts that I can talk to most of my athletes and I've cleaned more than them or I've snatched more than them, and just relating to them that even me or the strongest guy I've ever met, you always start with the bar every single day. And I'm always working on some particular skill. So with a lot of our athletes, it's on the actual extension part of the lift where we're trying to stay on a flat foot for longer, where most athletes get pulled to their toes. So we spend a lot of time just working on that top position where we're staying on flat feet so they have a really stable base to pull from. And then just work on those little things give them a focus on a day. If we're going to work on a complex or work on a lift, that's going to be my focus for that day. And so we're able to relate that to the athletes, that there is importance in the skill of what you're doing. I try to say that the weight used doesn't always equal strength. So if we're talking about just throwing weight on a bar and your form starts to break down, that doesn't mean you're doing it with strength. You're doing it, just with brute force,
No question. Well, that visual of having a good example, show them a good example, that gives more to an athlete than anything. That's most of the way that our athletes learn. What do? You got three ways of learning. You got, kinesthetically by feel, you got auditorily by hearing, but then you got visually. And most of the athletes, what they do is they go out, they practice, and they come in and they watch tape.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what they've brought up doing. That's how they've learned it. To learn. Very similar story. Most of the time I was able to lift or clean more than the guys early on in my career.
Yeah.
And so I get frustrated. You guys got 275 on the bar. It should be an easy weight for him, but it's not. He's getting crushed. What I do, like a dummy, is go cold, and I jump on the bar and I hit it, and I'm coming out of the squat, and he had sweat on the platform. So I slip, fall back, snap my wrist, and I'm in the cast. So some mentors of mine have never let me live that down, but kind of leads in my next question. When you have an injured athlete, this is one of the biggest things is, okay, if you're going to make Olympic lifting a big part of your program, what happens when you have that athlete, which you always do, especially at competitive levels, that's got the wrist, that's got the ankle, that's got something that's not 100%, because we tell our athletes when they walk in on campus when they're a freshman that's the best that they're ever going to feel.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's a big thing if you'd asked me 4 or 5 years ago, I would try every workaround to make some athlete do a clean, because I was just dead set on the Olympic lifts or bust, But as you work with more athletes, obviously that becomes closer to the norm, that athletes are going to have injuries, they're going to have nicks, whatever, that prevent them from doing specific things. So, just coming up with a list of suitable alternatives, and so, obviously, you talk about the wrist there's probably going to be a healthy wrist, and so we'll do stuff like a dumbbell snatch, or we'll do a kettlebell swing variation of some sort. And with the kettlebell swing, obviously you're going to be limited at some point in terms of load, but adding bands to that so that we can still get that explosive hip extension. Maybe not put such a demand on the shoulders or whatever. When it comes to the back type stuff, as opposed to loading it in front of the body where we're going to have some sort of shear forces on the back, we're going to try and load, directly on top. So, those are plyometrics with vests and stuff like that. So the load is centered over their body. So we're always looking for workarounds. Obviously, I feel like the benefits of doing the Olympic lifts are high enough that if an athlete's capable, I'm gonna teach them how to do them right, and we're gonna do it. Sure. But workarounds is huge. You wouldn't be a good coach unless you're the one who's able to figure those things out to help get the athletes the benefits, even when a specific movement is something they can't do.
You talked about technique there. One of the things that I really liked about you, one of the reasons why I wanted to make this phone call, was I really liked the 3-step approach to the bar that you take. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, of course. So, and that's in reference to the power clean or power snatch when the bar's on the floor. I always, if I go into a high school weight room and I'll go in, help local high schools and talk to them, and first thing you see, kids got a power clean on the floor and they start rolling the bar around and they get all pumped up and whatnot. When you make that comparison to football, I say, you don't line up on a yard off the line of scrimmage and then back and then onto the line of scrimmage, and you don't dance around in your stance or whatnot. People aren't moving up and back and up and back. You have an alignment, and you take that alignment and then you execute your technique from there. And so that's kind of the premise of you every time you step to the bar when it's at rest on the floor, you have to line up in the same way. So my big thing is you step up to the bar. To get the right alignment in relationship to the bar, we're going to cover the shoelaces. So as the athlete looks down from above the bar, they're going to see the bow on their shoelaces covered. As a coach from the side, you're going to see the bar right across their midfoot. From that position, they're going to unlock their knees and they're going to hip hinge to where their hands are resting on their knees. So that's like a shortstop position, perfect hip hinge or RDL position. And then from that point, we've got horizontal space between their hips and the bar, so that's going to be a really nice loaded position later on. And then I just want to take the hips and descend them straight down to the ground. So I say that squat to the bar, and then you're going to have a pretty vertical shin alignment on the bar. They're going to be on flat feet. Their hips are going to be away from the bar, and their torso is going to be at a pretty consistent angle. In the snatch, it's about 30 degrees. In the clean, it's a little steeper than that. But, the three-step process then every time is cover the shoelaces, hinge to your knee, squat to the bar. And so, as I've done it and learned that way, many, many years ago, I can step up to the bar and do that really quickly. My younger athletes, it's
robotic.
It's 3 steps. It's 1, 2, 3. With me, it's just down to the bar. And, more advanced athletes, but every time you get on the bar, it's the same process. So you know that your hips are away from the bar, your feet are flat, the bar's close enough to you, and your hips are loaded.
Well, the other thing I liked about it was the mental conditioning of it, where just like you said, relating it to that football player, going out there and locking into your task, your job, and having that focus and make it automatic. And that's what you want to make when you're running a route or you're making a tackle. You want to make that process automatic, and I really like that. You've done a lot of speaking on Olympic lifting. You've written a book. You've done a video. What was your aha moment? What was the reasoning for saying, you know what, there needs to exist a product out there, or I need to be speaking on this subject? You were seeing something with your athletes. Where's the breakdown? What's going on?
Well, I just thought there was a lot of different language, and a lot of my biggest mentors are Olympic weightlifting coaches, from my first coaches up to guys I call on a weekly basis to ask for pointers on my athletes, right? But Olympic lift coaches sometimes just want to make it more difficult than it really is. When you're training an Olympic lifter to be in competition, that's one thing. But when you're training athletes, simplistic and to the point and easy to digest cues are really good things. So I just felt like there was a space for me to talk about it as a guy with an Olympic lifting background who applies 95 to 99% of these techniques with just athletes. I don't have a large group of kids that are competing weekly on at Olympic lifts. I have a handful of kids that decided they didn't want to do their normal sport and they were going to do Olympic lifting. So I'm not coming at it from the basis of everyone needs to do full cleans, full snatches, clean and jerks, and train 2 times a day. I'm talking about using it at an effective level for nearly all of your athletes. So I thought there was that space, and I just thought with my athletes, I was seeing, they were learning in high school that by the old look at that guy and do it how he's doing it,
Right.
And that's how I first learned was, in high school was, hey, look at that, that guy's doing this, you should do that. So, and then, I was exposed to really good coaches, but, you don't have to take 6 weeks with just a bar like I did to learn how to Olympic lift. I think you can get most athletes doing it at a really effective level in a really short amount of time, maybe 1 to 2 sessions, 3 sessions max for most athletes. So that was kind of the gap I wanted to fill, was that there's an opportunity to teach athletes efficiently and quickly how to do the Olympic lifts really, really well.
Yeah, you mentioned, with different sports, you train differently. You don't, and obviously there's a clear distinction between training for Olympic weightlifting versus training for football or basketball or any other sport. I was listening to Alan Hedrick the other day. He was talking about the the split jerk or the split snatch and alternating legs as opposed to just going with the dominant leg or whatever you're comfortable with to make it so that you're a little bit more balanced. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I wrote something about this recently, and it was if you're into Olympic weightlifting and you want to compete, pick a leg and go, and just stick with that leg. I don't know if for the first 10 years that I Olympic lifted, if I ever jerked with my right foot forward.
Right.
I always did left foot forward jerks every single time. And if I did a right foot forward jerk, it felt like I was right with my left hand or something. So, but for athletes, absolutely, I want them to be I want them to be able to vary their athletic stance in multiple ways. So going from that bilateral comfortable stance that you're going to drive the jerk up with, or pull your snatch or pull your clean with, and then switching stances really quickly into 1 foot forward is just the definition of athleticism to me. Athletes have to adjust, when they're sprinting, when they're jumping, when they're moving laterally. And I'm not saying that that there is a big difference in power production by putting 1 foot forward, but in terms of force absorption, athletes need to learn how to absorb and push off with one leg over the other. So with my athletes all the time, if we're split jerking or split snatching, which I do quite a bit, or split cleans, we're gonna do sets typically of 2 at minimum. So we're gonna have 1 foot forward on each rep.
Right. In the collegiate setting, in the high school setting, pro setting, team, you're going to get 40 guys in there. You're going to get 50 guys in there sometimes, some situations. And if you're in that situation, and I don't know at force there if you how many guys you have at once or how many athletes you have at once, but when you're in that team setting, what's your recommendations on the best way to coach when you have various levels of ability and talent and strength?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, fortunately, I have really good relationships with the high schools around here. So, about once every season, I go out to different high schools and take teams through it. So, and I'm working at the high school level with kids who are 13, 14 years old, all the way up to 18. So, there's probably a bigger strength discrepancy there than there is between 18 and 22 that you would see at high school or at the college level. So really, what I say is I just don't take anything for granted. We're going to do the same drills. We're going to go through the same progression at least once a semester or once a season with every athlete. And maybe that's one session or one training session or 2 training sessions max. But I'm going to take every athlete through that progression. The stronger guys may do that progression with 50 kilos, 60 kilos, 135, 145 pounds on the bar. But the weaker guys may be doing just a barbell or a PVC pipe. So we'll accommodate for strength levels, but knowledge levels, I think it's always effective for even the most advanced guys to go back to basics for a period of time. So we'll go through the same basic teaching progression once a season with all our guys. With the kids that come in my place, so we'll have 10 to 12 kids in a training session just based on size of our place. And when those football guys get back from the off season or from the season and they're in their early off season stuff, first couple weeks is all technique, with a barbell, just the barbell, 40, 50, 60 kilos, keeping them pretty light, but spending a period of time on each progression as we go. So for me, I just always think back to basics is a great way to go. If you have established teaching progressions, it's also a great way to incorporate your young guys into what your advanced guys are doing. It always makes those guys feel a bigger part of the team if they're doing the same thing as starting defensive ends doing.
No question. One of the things that I really liked about your video that I watched is, like you just said, systems. You have a logical progression. You have some alternatives for when there's those breakdowns in technique to go and correct those techniques and that progression. And I think that's important to revisit that through the year. We would always revisit it during the in season. It's a good opportunity because obviously you're not going to be able to load as much as you would in the off seasons, but it's your longest extended training period. And so being able to go through and go back and reprogram through systems the athlete is great. And I picked up a ton of stuff from you in those videos, and I appreciate that. I want to be respectful of your time. I know you're busy. You got your product launch. You're at work. The whole deal. Obviously, you guys can go to wilfleming.com, and I'll put that in the show notes. But what else? This is kind of shameless plug time. What do you got going on right now?
Well, the DVD we're talking about is Complete Olympic Lifting. So if you go to wilfleming.com, that's Will with one L. Over in the right sidebar, you'll see a link to buy that, or you can go to CompleteOlympicLifting.com and pick it up. And it does kind of what we talked about. It outlines my progressions for the clean, snatch, and jerk. Gives examples of all the variations you can do, variations in start position, receiving position, which is where you're going to see the big variation, and common corrections for errors that you're going to have. One thing that's kind of helpful is we talk about some of the prerequisite movements we want to see. We want to see athletes be able to hinge, squat, create force and absorb force before we're going to put them on the platform, and then just kind of gives my basic ideas on even where to start. One big thing is, do you start with the power clean? Do you start with the snatch? Do you start with the hang clean? Whatever. Give some of that. So they can check that out at CompleteOlympicLifting.com or go to my website, WilFleming.com, and you can find it on the front of the page.
Well, we'll make sure to put that in the show notes. But Will, hey man, I really appreciate it. I learned a ton. I appreciate the knowledge that you're sharing and putting it out there, and I think we're all getting a little bit better by talking to you. So I appreciate that.
Coach, I really appreciate it. It means a ton that coming from a guy of your stature that you got some stuff out of it, and I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, we'll talk to you later, bud.
I will see you.
Just a quick reminder, don't forget to go to the bottom of the blog post and check out the links that were mentioned during the interview.